On bright new clear blue morning, what a crazy sight to see. Wakes up tripping over his grave clothes. Oh, that sure sounds a lot like me. Lazarus unwind. For a true believer, Lazarus unwind. Unwound. Follow the voice of my salvation. Still tied up head to toe. God send me brothers and sisters to loose me and let me go like Lazarus unwind. For a true believer, Lazarus unwind. So alive again. Da da da, I'm gonna be set free. Da da da, I'm gonna walk, I'm gonna run, I'm gonna see. I'm gonna see like Lazarus unwind. For a true believer, Lazarus unwind. For a true believer, Lazarus unwind. I'm gonna be to thank our opening quartet and the chancel choir for bringing us into the heart of worship. Now, it's just our job to stay there. Truly want to welcome those who are here. There are some regular faces who braved the elements to come out, and there are some folks who are visiting for the first time, and there are folks who are back into the community after being away for a while. We're glad you're all here, and we're all here for the purpose of worshiping God and fellowshipping with one another. You should have received one of these that was filled with all kinds of inserts, and I need to spend just a little bit of time with that. Please tear off the section that is part of that outside cover, and there's a place for you to indicate any prayer concerns you may have, and there's also several sign-ups for ministries in the church. So if you would complete that and have that ready, we just ask that at the end of the service, you place that in one of the offering plates that's at one of the exits to the sanctuary. And we're not asking our guests to make an offering here to the church. We run our ministries, but put your offerings in there. Also, one of the items that's inserted is probably just an ordinary looking envelope. Well, that ordinary looking envelope is to be used for an extraordinary ministry that we've got that we're hosting today that's Darla McFadden, and you'll be hearing her in just a bit. She's really the heart of our service today, and in both word and song. So as a love offering for her, and she came all the way from St. Charles, Missouri last night so that she could be here this morning. This is a love offering for her, and that's the way we'll distinguish it from any other offerings that are being made for the church that you might otherwise be doing. Now in there, there's a small group booklet, and if you were here last week, you should have gotten one of these. The idea is that we all get connected one with another. Worship is beautiful and it helps us connect with God. We need to also connect with one another, and you do that in a much smaller group than you do in a worship setting such as this. So take a look at the offerings there, because I'm going to challenge us, each one of us, to be involved in a small group of some sort. And finally, one of those small groups, if you want to call it that, is United Methodist Women, and they put on their bazaar that is held every election day, and I'm guessing there will be a pretty good turnout in this election. Don't ask me why I think that, but take a look and see how you can be of assistance in their great effort that helps further the ministries that they support. You may or may not know that they have funded our church camp, which is actually a day camp. It's a 5-day camp that we do in conjunction with the Presbyterian Church in town. It's an amazing thing, and I want to thank them for underwriting that. And this is one of the ways that they can do that in other ministries that they do. So, with that, take it away.
Okay, if you can or if please stand as we sing Above All and Indescribable.
Above all powers, above all Good morning. Please join me in the call to worship, which will be displayed that is responsive. We gather this morning, opening our spirits to the uplifting power of God. We look to God, in whom we trust, to help us face the circumstances and people in our lives who cause us trouble. In a world where you may feel put down, God is in the business of lifting you up. May our spirits be so lifted up that we avoid the temptation to put down others. God is ready and willing to show us the way to life and goodness and beauty and truth. May God save us from despair and destruction and teach us the way of truth and integrity. O Lord, remember your mercy and steadfast love. Remember not the sins of my youth or my transgressions. According to your steadfast love, remember me, for the sake of your goodness, O Lord. For good and upright is the Lord, who instructs us, sinner, in the way, and shows us the way to go. All the paths of the Lord are steadfast love and faithfulness, for those who strive to be in right relationship with those around them and speak openly and honestly. Come, let us worship the Lord of life. You may be seated. The scripture reading this morning is from Job chapter 23, verses 1 through 9 and 16, 17. Job replied, I'm not letting up. I'm standing my ground. My complaint is legitimate. God has no right to treat me like this. It isn't fair. If I knew where on earth to find him, I'd go straight to him. I'd lay my case before him face to face, give him all my arguments firsthand. I'd find out exactly what he's thinking, discover what's going on in his head. Do you think he'd dismiss me or bully me? No, he'd take me seriously. He'd see a straight-living man standing before him. My judge would acquit me for good of all charges. I travel east looking for him. I find no one. Then west, but not a trace. I go north, but he's hidden his tracks. South, but not even a glimpse. But he is singular and sovereign. Who can argue with him? God Almighty gives me the shudders. I'm completely in the dark. Apologize. I can't see my hand in front of my face.
We're really delving into some remarkable territory this month. The month of October, we are entering into a study, if you will, of the book of Job. Last week, we heard Wendy Deering-Pointer as she shared thoughts on the idea of disorientation into the whirlwind. That's the beginning chapters of Job. I'm continuing that this week and really pointing to our singer and one who is sharing with us her word and testimony on the idea of being deserted, which you picked up, I think, perhaps in the reading that we had just heard from Job. Next week it will be silence. And then the final week in October, Chris Conrad will bring the word on the idea of restoration. But here we are, deserted. There are times in our lives when we feel that way. So I'm just going to ask that we enter into a time of prayer. I'm going to kneel at the communion rail as I offer the pastoral prayer this day. And in a sense, I'm offering that for all of us. But there'll be a bit of silence within that for you to consider silently your thoughts for God in this prayer. God, indeed, just as some days are cloudy and rainy, just as the weather can turn and we can feel the sharpness of the wind, so it can be in our lives. That there are times that we shudder. Sometimes we shudder because of the circumstances that we find ourselves in. Sometimes we shudder because we think we're not up to what we need to face. Sometimes we shudder because we're afraid we may have to face you when there are things that we know aren't right about us us in our world. But you offer us a quiet place, a safe place, a welcome ear, open arms. Like the loving father who received the prodigal son after he had made his wandering journey and grown very distant from you, from that man, his father. Like the loving father who welcomed even the older brother who was so dutiful but also resentful, not truly understanding that the love of the Father is much greater and more welcoming than we can even imagine, and is not based upon the things that we can check off on our list of what we ought to do. Look into the hearts of those who are worshiping here this morning, each one of us, and hear the prayers that come to mind, but also hear the groans and the moans and the deep silences and even the turned backs that we present as we come to you this day. Because you know our prayers even before or whether or not we can vocalize them. And so we come to you with gratitude in our hearts for being not only the author of creation with all of its beauty and goodness, as not only the one who stands for truth and calls us to do the same, but as the one who is so inviting, helping us, companioning us along our way, so that we can truly live into the people that you would have us to be, that we really, in our better judgment, would have us to be. So hear this, the prayers of our hearts that we lift in the name of Christ, who taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever.
All right, it's short people time. So if you are a youth, a child or child at heart, please come down. You can be, please. I'm gonna sit right here, so just gather around here on the floor, and I wanna invite someone special to be with us today. So Darla McFadden, if you come join me here on the hot seat. So as she gets seated, we're gonna be conducting an interview today with an award-winning musical artist. I'm pretty excited, and we're going to do this like a talk show host. And so we're a talk show, you're the studio audience today, and so I want you to watch for this cue. If I go at any time, I want you to go, oh, and then follow that by saying this, okay, like the studio audience is talking about something they're really, okay, so here's your cue. Ready? Oh, okay, it's gonna be so good. All right, so cue the music. No, there's no music for this talk show. All right, welcome. So, just a few questions here, just to see how God has brought you to this point. So, how young would you say you were when you first started singing?
I sang in church with my family from the time I could stand up. 3 or 4 years old. I sang in church with my family. Yeah.
With your family? But then at one point, maybe they pushed you out on your own. Did that happen?
Yeah, they were sick of me and they said, go do it alone. 16. Oh. 16 I started doing solo.
Yeah, you can drive a car at the age of 16 by yourself, but singing, so what do you mean solo things?
Well, I began being a special guest at churches for like just a special song, or I would do Mother's Day programs, or I would be a Sunday night special event. And pastors were really nice and nurtured my talent and my calling and helped me get more comfortable and become a little better.
Very good. All right, that's all for the easy questions. Now let's dig in. Are you ready, studio audience? All right, here we go. first rough question. Oh, I got all this. I've only got 2 now. You're good. Oh, look at her move away. Here we go. Have you ever been scared to perform?
Very much so, yes. Yes. I sang at, you want the example I'm assuming? When I was 18, I sang at an Indiana Pacer game. You know who they are? They're basketball. They still play, I think, don't they? I don't know. But I sang, I was asked to sing, I won a contest and got to sing at the Pacer game, and that was really frightening. Scared to death. Yeah.
But yet, even though you were scared, God still used your talent.
Very much so. I knew if I prepared myself, he would take care of the rest. And he did. And I didn't mess up. I did fine. Okay.
That brings me to my next question so perfectly. Have you ever messed up?
Yeah. Like last week? No, yes, I mess up all the time. And the worst time I remember messing up was I was singing for someone's wedding. And I just completely butchered the song. And it was their wedding, you know. It was this beautiful God moment, bringing these people together. And that broke my heart. But on a regular basis, on Sundays, it's not uncommon for something not to be perfect. And I always tell myself, and my prayer is, it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be sincere. And I know if I'm sincere, that I'll help bring God in the room and other people can feel that. So I mess up all the time, all the time.
And then, like, at that wedding, that's when God just said, you know what, just quit, you're done.
Well, I quit doing weddings.
Not what I was looking for.
He's never healed that one. He spoke to me and said, stop, my child. You
So we could be witnesses to history. If she messes up really bad today, this could be it. Wow, that's a lot of pressure on us as an audience.
That was really my last wedding. I'm kidding. I probably wouldn't mess up. But I would do it again if someone else. Yeah, I would do it now.
And God keeps pushing. He keeps using us even when we mess up. The flute player today, there was a time at the very end of the song when we were supposed to have flute notes and piano notes line up at the very end, and they didn't line up.
I think it was the piano player.
It was totally me. It was me. I mess up on a weekly basis. But God keeps using us. Praise God. Is there one question out here that you might have from the studio audience that you'd like to ask someone who sings, writes songs, right?
Did you ever have a favorite song that you sang?
Yep. This is going to age me. There was a singer named Sandy Patty, and back when I was very young, like y'all, she was a really big deal, and I listened to her all the time. And there was a song she sang called There Is a Savior. And I know you've probably never heard of it, but it'd be really cool if you listen. You can YouTube it. And it was so beautiful. And that's the first time I felt worship through music in that way. It was so much bigger than just singing on a Sunday morning. It was a much bigger experience. That's always been my favorite song, still is.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on our show today. It's been a pleasure interviewing you. We've made it, and let's pray together. Dear God, we thank you so much that there is a Savior, someone who will take our faults, our weaknesses, our mess-ups, and still use them for your glory. In Jesus' name. Amen.
I don't think I'm going to ever ask you to interview me. Just thinking, but this memory flashed in my mind of a wedding that I performed. Actually, it's not exactly messing up a song, but I can't say that I once messed up the name of the couple that I was marrying. But there was this day when, and this was really, really rough. I mean, I had 2 weddings, and it was going fine, and I had it all, I printed out this stuff so that I get it right, but you have to look at it if you print it out. And so I performed the first wedding. The mother of the bride fainted. And you just have to realize there was some drama in this family. And so I'm looking over at the best man, I'm saying, we're going on with this. So we did that, and actually the mother was grateful that we had done that. So that was like a few hours before the evening wedding, when I used the name of the first couple with the couple that was getting married there. And they laughed, and they corrected me, and I thought, oh yeah, that's right. And then, see, you mentioned the name more than once, though, in the service. And the second time they didn't laugh. I just couldn't do that. But I've done about 100 weddings since then, too. Never happened before, never happened since, so let's hope I'm not tempting fate. Well, earlier today, I had the privilege of being part of a prayer breakfast on campus. Yes, you heard me right. You know, people think that you're just totally precluded from doing religious things on campus. That's not true. Obviously, there are campus ministries like the Ayers Wesley Foundation. But even on campus, you can have a sponsored event that was a prayer breakfast. There are just certain sensitivities that you use in setting one of those up, which you actually ought to use in your own church, I think. But, so I was welcome to give an opening inspiration. There were about 15 inspirations on this service that was put together by Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Clarence Green gave the presentation. That's the chief of police on campus, and there were a couple of members of our church who were also present there. That was nice to have breakfast with them. But it really went along with one comment that Clarence Green said, Dr. Clarence Green, who, by the way, is from East St. Louis, Illinois. If you know any geography here, East St. Louis is just east of St. Louis, duh. But it's its own community in southern Illinois, and right next to it is the county seat, which is Belleville. And at the time that Clarence was being raised in East St. Louis, it was virtually a black city. And at the time I was being raised a few years before Clarence's time in Belleville, it was virtually a white city. That has since kind of moved together. It's, East St. Louis is still largely, well, almost exclusively populated by a black population. But Belleville is now about 30% African American, and it's happened in a good, constructive way. You know, I've mentioned this in other forums, that in fact, unlike Ferguson, where things blew up, and I think as much as any, it happened so fast that institutions don't adapt the way they need to. Communities don't do that, and so there's a lot more friction when it happens that way. But in Belleville, even as early as 3 years ago, there was an African-American chief of police in this majority white town. So they're kind of getting over it, you know, in the world that we envision, which is one in which race is not a determining factor in terms of people's lives. That's my report there. But Clarence Green spoke, and one of the things he said was, when you suffer with someone, you learn to love them. And I guess I'm going to do this. I hope you're reading the book of Job sometime during this month, but there's a section that really we're in right now where Job has, they're called the comforters of Job, sometimes they're called friends of Job, but basically these friends are saying, you must have done something wrong to bring this on to yourself. And Job's saying, I didn't, you know, evil must just happen, and I really have some questions for God, and God is avoiding me, and no, I'm really an upright man. I didn't do anything wrong. And if you heard me last week, again, my critical introduction to the book of Job is that my realization is that really this book functioned to let people know who had lost their homeland. It was like an alternative explanation, if you will, to the children of Israel, the Jews, for having their country decimated, their temple destroyed. The prophet said, we did this wrong and this is why this happened to us. And the book of Job kind of says, no. You know, there are forces in this world that can take us down that really aren't directed by God, but somehow they're permitted by God. You know, that's what Job kind of says. So, but these three persons who came to Job, and I have to say that I probably fit in that category. You know, not one of them had experienced what Job had experienced. They hadn't experienced the loss, they hadn't experienced that feeling of being deserted by God. And so it was easier for them, I think, to say, well, you must have done something wrong, and
Was it this, was it that? Or I think it was probably this, Joe, that sort of thing. Because I haven't experienced any cataclysmic loss in my family. I have had 2 brothers who have died, and this is no small loss. I think it was larger for my parents in many ways. In fact, I know it was. But many of you have experienced such losses. You can identify more with Job, I think. But this is what Clarence Green again says: when you suffer with someone, you learn to love them. So if you find yourself as one of those friends out there, like me, that maybe hasn't experienced that, learn to suffer with someone. Literally, it's calm passion. Passion meaning suffer, calm meaning with, to suffer with someone. So this God of compassion leads us into that. And so with that, I'm just going to ask that Noah McFadden, would you come here? We're so looking forward to what you have to share with us.
It's so nice to meet you all. We're going to sing a little bit, talk a little bit. Let's just talk about a really great place to get started, and this is called Jerusalem.
John saw the city that could not be hid. John saw that city, oh yes he did. John caught a glimpse of a golden throne. Tell me all about it, just go right on around the throne. He saw the crystal sea, there's got to be more. What will it be? I want to go to that city he saw, New Jerusalem. Jerusalem, I want to walk your streets that are golden. And then I want to run where the angels have trod. Jerusalem, I want to rest on the banks of your river. In that city, the city of God. John saw the lion, he laid down by the lamb, and I want to know everything about that land. John saw the day, but he did not see night. The Lamb of God, well, he must be the light. He saw the saints worship the great I am. They're crying, worthy, worthy is the Lamb. I want to go to that city he saw, New Jerusalem. Jerusalem, I want to walk your streets that are golden. And then I want to run where the angels have trod. Jerusalem,
live just down the road a little bit, just in a little suburb of St. Louis, Missouri. Lake St. Louis is the name of the little town I reside in. I live there with my 2 daughters. Their ages 18 and 19. Well, my oldest was a sophomore in college, so she doesn't really reside there anymore. She's a sophomore at SLU, and my youngest is a senior in high school. And they're just about through the teenage years. And when I would bring them to churches with me when they were very small, and they'd be running around, they were just kids, and every week I was throwing them in 2 or 3 different churches, and people would say, oh, honey, just wait until they're teenagers, just wait. And so now they're teenagers, and we're almost out of that. So now people say to me, oh, just wait until they're 20s, just wait. I like to stop waiting and just start loving. We just do the best we can every day to get through this life. With God's help, we've done it pretty well. They're cool kids. My father is a United Methodist pastor. After 45 years, he retired last year from ministry. It was time to, because he was getting mad. So it was time for him to, he was losing his Jesus the older he got. So he needs to be out there and worshiping like God fill him up instead of being the one in charge of pouring it out. He needs to be the one enjoying God's grace from out there, and he is now. So he and Mom live in a little town in Indiana called Terre Haute. And I have this really cool job of coming and singing and sharing and loving, and I hope when you leave you might say, yeah, that lady, she didn't sing that great, but man, she's happy. Jeez, she's so happy. And I smile and I'm happy and I'm joyful not because my life has been simple and I could give you testimony after testimony of challenges and trials, but because in those really dark moments, I got to know God in such a really fantastic way. And when you've been at the bottom, and when you've been hurt, and you've been rejected, and you've been abandoned, and you've been lost, that's when God gets to show you why he's so awesome. And I've gotten to feel that a few times, and for that I'm thankful. And for that I smile, and I stand here to tell you that same testimony that he's waiting at for you too. So let's sing something we all know now. If you want to get out your good old-fashioned hymnals, you don't have to, but if you like that, this is on page 77 of your hymnal. This is a traditional song that we're going to do in a little more praise and worship way, and it just makes me happy. It reminds me, it's one of my grandma's favorites, God rest her soul, and it makes me happy when I sing it, and I hope it does for you too. Oh Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the worlds thy hands have made, I see the stars, I hear the roaring thunder, thy path throughout the universe display. This is the great part. You're ready? Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art! How great thou art! So great. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art! How great thou art! Verse 3. And when I think, and when I think, here's your verse, that God his Son not sparing, sent him to die, I scarce can take it in, that on the cross, my burden gladly bearing, he bled and died, just to take away my sin. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art! How great thou art! Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art! How great What joy shall fill my heart, then I shall hide in humble adoration, and there proclaim, my God, how great thou art. Last time, sing. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art, how great thou art, how great thou Isn't that a great song? I love to sing hymns like in a fun way like that because we sing them and you may hear the organ playing and it's all very straight and it's beautiful that way too, but I love to really sing it and feel it. The words are so good. And there was somebody who wrote thousands of hymns in the mid-late 1800s and her name was Fanny Crosby. And you may not have heard of her, but if you look in the hymn and flip through the pages just a couple times, chances are you'll see some of her work in there. She wrote songs such as Pass Me Not, O Gentle Savior, and Jesus Keep Me Near the Cross. What was amazing about her, among other things, is she was blind. And her gift was God-given, and she used it in every way possible to give him the glory and to give him the honor. Well, she passed a very long time ago, and her family and her estate found several notebooks full of her writing with unfinished lyrics that weren't finished, and they kept them close to their heart. They meant everything. They were in her own handwriting. I've got my grandma's chocolate mayonnaise cake recipe in her handwriting. I know that sounds gross unless you've had one. There's nothing gross about chocolate mayonnaise cake. So those things are so special. And finally after the next generation kind of took hold of those works, they decided they were so special, they wanted them to be finished and developed and heard. And they got in touch with a friend of mine in Nashville named Wayne. And Wayne was so honored to get to do this. And he took this notebooks of lyrics and got with other writers, and they created 15 amazing songs of Fanny Crosby's that they finished. And as a writer, they said to be in the room, poring over these notebooks that she touched with her writing and her spirit and her grace all over them. They said they felt them not only in the room writing, but when they were recording. And I got the honor of singing one of the songs. And I leave today to head down to Nashville for the Dove Awards. If you don't know what that is, it's the award thing for Christian music. And Fanny Crosby made it to the top 8, but we didn't make it to the top 4. But we're still going to celebrate this beautiful project that God allowed us to be a part of. And then Wednesday, I'm in the studio recording album number 11. So I've got a lot of fun, exciting, busy things happening this week. But I want to sing for you just a sliver of the song that I was a part of on this project, because it's so beautiful. And the words that were written so many decades ago are still so relevant to what's going on right now. And it's called Hold Me Up. Hold me up, for thou art mighty, and the world feels cold and low in your arms, a sweet reflection. Oh Lord, grant me from thy throne. Hold me up, for thou art mighty, and your spirit can renew pretty? And I sang it with a guy named Jason Crabb. If you follow gospel music, you might know him. And boy, he just put his spirit into it. God, it's all over that song. Well, I'm just going to sing it out. This is a classic. You'll know this one because you like Southern gospel. See if you know. How big a fan are you? I Am by the Hoppers, circa 1994. You're not even that old to know them. I love them, and I love this song. It's so biblical and simple and right to the point. I am. Show us more miracles. If you're our Messiah, give us free bread each day. And just like our fathers had as they journeyed through the wilderness, but this is what Jesus has to say. He says, I'm the bread of life. You will never grow hungry. I am your water. Drink and never thirst again. I'm your father. Child, I know you by name. I am, and I'll never change. He's the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. He's still the same as he was back then. And just like he raised the dead and caused a blind to see, he'll work miracles if you just believe. He says, I'm the bread of life. You'll never grow hungry. I am your water. Drink and never thirst again. I'm your father. Child, I know you by name. And I'll never change. He says, I'm the bread of life. You'll never grow hungry. I am your water. Drink and never thirst again. I am your father, child. I know you by name. And I'll never change. He says, I am the bread of life. I am your water. I am your father, child. I know you by name. And I'll never change. Go on YouTube and watch that too. You got your little YouTube, kind of just YouTube everything. Well, I was in church a few years ago, and anytime I get to a church, especially a new church, it's always fun because you get to tell a new story and meet all the new people. And I'd never been here, and they had 3 services, so I got there super early to start my sound check and make sure everything was great. But the one thing they were looking for when I got there was a certain microphone that they wanted me to have for my part. It was my favorite mic. It's called a Shure Beta. It's an awesome mic. And they only had one, and they were trying to help me find it so that I could use it. They had no idea where it was. So I used the next best mic, which was completely fine. Sound check was great. The worship started, and the praise and worship team got up front to start singing. And when they did, they noticed that the lead singer of the praise and worship team had that Beta microphone that they'd been looking for. Turns out she hid it after every church service because she's a Jesus person like that. And I think these guys knew it because they were honored with me from the minute we started talking. I think they kind of knew it, but this is what they told me. Hey, Darla, there's that microphone. After this song, they're done. So they're going to shake hands, the congregation. So why don't you go up there and just get that microphone from her? It's already on, it works, and we'll just take it on down. I said, okay, no problem. I'm a preacher's kid. I work with pastors and music ministers every week. This is not a big deal. So I go out to start walking down the aisle to see this wonderful one. And everybody's shaking hands and loving each other. So as I'm walking, I'm hearing this, good morning, how are you? How are the kids? How's your cat? All the love we do in those few minutes of greeting each other. So I'm walking down the aisle, hearing all the positive, and I walk up to her and I say, hey, my name's Darla. And I said, I'm the one singing this morning, and I would love it if I could use that microphone for my part of the service. It's such a great mic, She looked at me and she said, I don't know who you are. Like we was coming off the street, just take your microphone in the middle of church. And I said, well, I'm Darla. I'm the one singing this morning. And she said, well, Darla, she said, I didn't invite you here. So, bless you. And she said, no one asked me if I wanted you here. And I'm a music minister at this church, and I'm a professional. And your microphone, that's how when it's not, is when they have to proclaim it, right? So she said, and my microphone was set by my friend who's a professional sound man, not those guys. So if you or they touch any part of my microphone or my channel on the board, I will kill you. That's what she said. I was in front of the church. And she's saying she's going to kill me. I know I'm blonde and annoyingly happy, but you don't have to take me down. You have to do that. And I looked at her for a moment and I thought, maybe this is a joke. Maybe this is her humor. I didn't know her. And I looked at the layperson who was there conducting worship that morning, and she was mortified. So I knew when I looked at her face, this was real. If I touched the microphone, imminent death was going to occur. It was going to be the end of Darla right there on Sunday morning in Evansville, Indiana. There's a lot of Methodist churches there, so I'm not giving it away which one. and so I just looked at her, I said, every part of preacher's kid in me came out. I said, you know what, that's just fine. My mic's fine. Thank you so much for letting me be here with you today. And then I went to say, now get out of my way. It's my turn. But I didn't say that. I was very nice as she walked to the back of the church where she stood the entire time I was singing and sharing with her arms crossed and her microphone right there. I was like, so I thought, wow, that's really important to her. She really needs that microphone. That's okay. And most of the time I was singing, I hate to admit it, but I was looking for a way to get out of the church without walking past her. I was looking for every door possible to get away without walking that way, because that's where she was. And I found one. So I finished singing, I found a door, but it went outside. So I ended up going outside of the church, and I didn't think something was going on. And I walked all the way back into the back to love on people, shake hands, say hello to people. As soon as I got to my table, here she comes out the sanctuary, still carrying that sweet microphone with her. She comes running towards me to talk to me. And I thought, okay, I've touched her doorknob, I stood on her carpet square, I've done something else to offend this woman, and she already doesn't like me. So she came over to me and she said, that's pretty good. I said, well, thank you, I just love doing it. She said, I'm sorry I said that to you earlier. I said, that's okay, we all have our stuff. And she said, well, I've been having a hard time. I said, oh yeah? I said, what's going on? She said, well, so I lost my husband to cancer a few months ago. And it was really fast, and he was only 53, and it was so fast. It was pancreatic cancer. It came and he was gone. And then she said a few weeks ago, my oldest son was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and I don't even understand what that is. So she said, everything's just kind of a mess right now. And I looked at her, and I said, I get it. Because when life is crumbling all around you, you know you have 15 minutes in front of your church every Sunday morning to do praise and worship. And you need those 15 minutes to be perfect. You need them to work. You don't need any microphone trouble. You don't need any song trouble. You just need to be okay. Because that may be the only time the entire week that she had peace, is when she was thinking of something other than her pain and her hurt and her sorrow. I got it. Forgiven, done. And then I thought, but I'm going to tell your story for years. Years, there's a testimony, you are. And it reminded me of something I went through. It was 10 years ago in September. So just last month, it's been 10 years. When my husband of 15 years came home and said he didn't want to be around me anymore, didn't like this anymore. He was an OBGYN who I'd gotten through 13 years of medical school. So pretty much our entire life was about his education. And just when it got easy, he ran off with the old nurse, the old thing that always happens. He decided he liked her better. So he came home, we had this beautiful home, you know, the beautiful pool, 2 gorgeous daughters, the right cars were parked in the driveway, and in that moment, everything kind of fell apart. And he said, I'm out, I'm gone, I don't want to be here. We've been together for a total of 19 years. And I remember laying in the bed the morning he moved out. The move-out date was November 5th. And I was laying in the bed with both of my daughters on either side of me, ages 8 and 10. And I was simply listening to them sleep. And they slept with me ever since the week before we told them Daddy was leaving. They got in bed with me and they stayed there for several months, as long as they needed. They stayed there until. That's what I told them, you stay until. And I listened to them breathe, and while I heard them breathing, I was simultaneously hearing the door open and close, because he was loading his car, which happened to be a very small Lexus sport car that did not hold much. But he was loading it, and I heard him. And I thought to myself, he's going to open that door, shut it, and it's not going to open again. What am I going to do? I can't even pay the water bill in this house, much less take care of these babies. And finally the door closed, and I laid there, and it was so quiet. And you know how you hear people say God speaks to you? And I'll tell you, I thought it was weird. I was 35, God never spoke to me. What does that mean? It's like a burning bush? Is that what happens, like the Bible? What does it mean? Well, I found out. Because I was laying there, and in my heart and my mind saying, I gotta get up, I gotta figure out what to do, God said to me in such a simple way, so a thought in my mind and in my heart, Darla, the pain stops right here. Let's get through this. The pain stops with you. Get up, let's get those kids breakfast, let's go, because when they wake up, their daddy's gone. And they need to know that you're okay. And you know what? He did help me be okay. And it took a really long time. A really long time. God doesn't leave. God doesn't desert you. And when you feel like you're all alone, please remember you're not. And you don't have to physically see him to feel him. And he doesn't have to appear in some grand way for him to speak to you. Life is so tough, and God is so great. And now I stand here, I graduated from college in December, I graduated my master's degree in psychology in May, and God has guided me and lifted me up and carried me. When I couldn't breathe, he took my breath. He has helped. And if you're in that spot today, he sees you. If you had to take a shot of Jack Daniels just to get into church this morning, he loves you. He doesn't care. He just wants you. He wants you. Wherever you're at, God sees you. He wants you. He wants to be your peace and your love. And if you're in a dark spot, be there. God does really good work in the dark because there's no distractions. God's amazing. Life is hard. People leave. God never does. This song is called Broken Ones. Maggie came home one day with a raggedy end. She says, Mama, look what I found in the neighbor's garbage can. With a missing left arm and a right button knife hanging by a thread. She carried it gently out to her room. She laid it on her bed. With her other dolls, she loves the broken ones. The ones that need a little passion now. She sees diamonds in the rough. She makes them shine like new. It really doesn't take that much. A willing heart and a tender touch. If everybody loved like he does, there'd be less broken ones. 20 years a shelter on 18th Avenue. A 17-year-old girl shows up all black and blue, with needle tracks in her left arm. She's almost too weak to stand. She says, I'm lost and I need some help. Then Maggie took her hand. She says, you come on in. She loves the broken ones, the ones that need a little passion now. She sees diamonds in her eyes. She makes them shine like new. It really doesn't take that much, a willing heart and a tender touch. If everybody loved like she does, it'd be a lot less broken heart. If you call her an angel, she'll be quick to say to you, she's just doing what the one who died for her would do. He loves the broken ones that need patching up. He sees diamonds in the rough. He'll make you shine like new. It really doesn't take that much, a willing heart and a tender touch. If everybody loved like he does, it'd be a lot less broken hearts. If everybody loves like he does, there'd be less broken ones. Thanks for having me this morning. Thank you.
Darla, thank you for traveling the distance and coming and sharing with us today and worshiping with us today. If the praise team would come up, they'll be the ones to send us out of here with our closing song. But so we'll change the order even at this end of our worship, just to offer a word of blessing. But just know that there's time to visit. You've got time to go to the gathering space. There's been some food prepared, some snacky kind of stuff. And help yourself, but spend some time in conversation with someone before you leave this place. And you'll get a chance to visit with Darla as well. And I think she didn't bring a big display, but I did get her to bring along some CDs. So if you want to see her, you can further her ministry in that way and appreciate it in your own home. But I invite you to stand and receive God's blessing. Oh God, you've called us here. You send us out. Wherever we are, you are there. Go with us. Help us know that you are with us in all that we do, and help us tend to the broken ones. Amen. Thank you, Jubilee. See you in the gathering space.